Good evening, dear friends. The modern world is ruthless and demands multitasking from our brains. Unfortunately, we have to push ourselves, and while watching television shows or other videos like series, we also have to check the latest news or various short videos at the same time. At the same time, we might be on our phones or playing difficult levels of games on a tablet, while also listening to music or even driving a car. Even while walking or eating, we often have to watch something on our phone screens or listen to important information at the same time. It could be in the form of melodies, songs, or just various news updates. That's why our brains are overloaded right now. Overloaded to the point that they constantly need a fresh supply of blood and are always consuming energy. Since we don't yet have the ability to shift everything onto artificial intelligence, we have to handle this overwhelming work ourselves. We have to remember everything, our own names, the names of our relatives, our cats and our dogs. Unfortunately, for now,
Hi guys. The doctor recommended me a great blood pressure monitor. Easy to use at home, accurate and reliable.
There's no way to fully delegate this function to our android cyborgs and other artificial intelligences. As long as we have this task before us, it's within our power to keep our brains active. Well, as long as we need to use our memory, we can strengthen and improve it a little. For this, we need to maintain blood supply to the brain so that over time we can be useful enough to artificial intelligence so that we will be eliminated. But those who have enough memory in their heads and the ability to properly service processors and other computer components, we will survive. And that's why we've gathered here today to prepare for the future. Because, as you know, the cybernetic intelligence will eventually enslave us. But still, those who watch this video and increase their brain, their memory capacity, their attention span many times over by thousands, up to several megabytes practically will remain useful. And they might even be able to compete with various Tetris games, for example. So, friends, the thing is, our brain is very complex, much more complex than your computer. If you look at its insides, it's different microchips. Ours is arranged in a much more complicated way. The connection between the brain and the rest of the body is carried out through the nervous system. The nervous system delivers information to our brain through nerves, almost like wires. Information comes from any point in the body. Our brain processes this information, decides what to do, and gives a response. The spinal cord is kind of like a case for not the spinal cord. The spine is the bony case for the spinal cord. And the spinal cord itself is, you could say, the main connection, the main trunk cable. Right here inside our spine is what connects your brain, the processor, to the body. And the brain regulates what and how things are done. The nervous system regulates the functioning of the whole body, not just with the help of the nervous system. For example, you pick up a pencil and write something with it. But the nervous system also regulates your heartbeat, your breathing and digestion. All of this also happens under its influence. It regulates hormone release and enzyme synthesis. Everything in our body is controlled not only by the brain, but also by other parts of the brain. In particular, there are the central and peripheral nervous systems. The peripheral nervous system is everything that is outside the skull and spine, meaning the central nervous system. That's the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral system is all the nerve plexuses that are in the body. But for our brain to function, there must be no obstacles to its functions. Our brain is supplied with blood by a system of several arteries. They form, how should I say, a common plexus inside the brain, but there are also several separate arteries. This is the common carotid artery, which then divides into the external and internal carotid arteries and the vertebral artery. All of this enters the cranial cavity, comes together, forms anastomosis, and creates the so-called circle of Willis. That is, all these arteries, here they are, the internal carotid artery, right and left, the vertebral artery. They enter the cranial cavity on the right and left, and here they connected with each other. Why is this done? This is done so that if blood stops flowing through one artery, for example, due to some reason, most commonly atherosclerosis or thrombosis, let's say for example, blood stops flowing through the right internal carotid artery, the remaining 2 or 3 arteries will compensate for this, meaning blood will flow more intensively through them. Here, all of this then branches out into other vessels. That's how it's arranged, but on the condition that this doesn't happen suddenly, meaning there will be time for a sort of reserve blood flow to form and strengthen. So, friends, but what is our task? Our task is not to allow this to happen, but, on the contrary, to greatly improve not only the blood inflow, but also the outflow. Because very often, and sometimes even unnoticed, problems with blood outflow occur, even at a fairly young age. For example, during examinations like ultrasound or Doppler studies of the neck and head vessels, they find issues with venous outflow. What is a problem with venous outflow? This is when the amount of blood coming to your head is not matched by the amount leaving. It means the outflow is difficult. Blood comes in well, but it doesn't leave well. Why does this happen? What causes it? It's because an obstacle appears in the way of the veins. Blood comes to the brain through the arteries, and it should leave through the veins. But the wall of the veins, as you know, is softer. The wall of the arteries is denser. It even has an elastic layer, and the pressure in the arteries is much higher than in the veins. That is, arterial blood, rich in oxygen, brings nutrients to the brain under pressure. And then all disused blood, after the brain has taken everything it can from it, disused blood returns to the heart through the veins, no longer enriched with oxygen, but because the muscles, due to muscle spasms, start to compress the veins, venous congestion occurs. And that's why new fresh blood can't flow well into the brain, because the old blood is still there. As you may remember from the stories, when a student came to the teacher and the teacher gave him a cup of tea and said, "Pour some tea in here," the student said, "I can't pour it in. There's already tea in here." The teacher replied, "That's why you need to understand wisdom to pour in new tea. You first have to pour out the old one." And that's how he taught him about life. So the same principle applies here, just like in the wise Chinese stories. You need the old blood to live first, and only then will the new blood come. This is age-old wisdom. X. You see, it's based on ancient knowledge. So, my friends, inflow and outflow. And the third thing is the direct work of the nervous system. Compression of nerves also disrupts the functioning of our brain. If there is constant irritation of a nerve, even if it is far from our brain, it distracts the work of our nervous system. For example, let's say I was stung by a wasp on my hand. Terrible pain shot through my hand and it hurts a lot. Then I tripped, fell, and broke my finger. Let's say my pinky. And it hurts even more. And this pain is constantly sending information to my brain, and my brain is already busy processing this pain. Dev innovast. I could spend my brain's resources on solving the most complex math problems, watching television shows, Dev innovast, or reading the news. But this pain doesn't let me focus on these important things. That's why 80 to 90% of my brain is focused on this. And if this irritant gets even closer to my brain, then, for example, toothache. Has anyone here ever had one? Are there people like that here? I'm curious if any of the viewers have experienced this. If so, write in the comments how you felt when you had a toothache. This pain starts to irritate the brain even more, and it begins to focus on it, unable to do anything else. That's why our task is this. And sometimes the nerve compression isn't that strong. Like when you have a toothache, but it's constant enough to be distracting. Disruption of attention in the brain, meaning constant impulses in the form of nerve irritation, which we might even stop feeling over time. Because this transmission gets blocked, also disrupts brain function. Specifically, it reduces attention and prevents us from focusing on important things. So friends, there are three main components that we need to restore in order to recover the brain, improve it, and bring it to its maximum possible function. The first is arteries, the second is veins, and the third is nerves. These are our three main principles for today. If I say arteries, veins should immediately come to your mind. If I say nerves, you should answer arteries and veins. This is how we will think from now on. So, friends, what do we do next? The theory is clear. The importance is justified. Now we move on to the practical part. The thing is, all of this is related to mechanical compression, meaning something is being squeezed somewhere, something is being pinched, and muscle spasms occur. But if we pay attention to our daily lives, is there really a lot of muscle tension in our lives? The maximum muscle tension humanity experienced was about 20 years ago, when we used to move around on our own feet, when we did things physically, when we lifted something heavier than a pencil or a spoon. But lately, we don't burden ourselves with physical activity. Most of the time, we spend sitting or lying down. Sometimes we stand a little, but we move very little. Modern people spend a lot of time in this position with their head tilted forward and their eyes eagerly studying information from their phone screen. As if I had a phone here to show you. These are the modern realities. So, my friends, muscle spasm. It forms because our muscles have become weak. They have become so weak that the weight of the head. Does anyone know how much their head weighs? Has anyone ever weighed it? Well, for some, it's about 3 kilograms. For others, 4. For some people, if they have all their teeth, maybe even for those who have, say, gold teeth or a lot of hair, it could be 5 kilograms. Or because of their cheeks. Like some people, well developed, but overall, no. 3 kilograms is just the weight of the brain. Your head won't weigh only 3 kilograms, but maybe even up to 10 kilograms, I think. But in general, if you weigh the head separately, it's hard to say how much it weighs apart from the whole body. Somehow, maybe someone has weighed it before. So, friends, the first thing we need to do here, in this picture, the short neck extensors are shown. All the neck muscles can be divided into several groups. There are extensor muscles located here in the back and among them. You can also divide them into 2 groups. These are the short extensors. These are the muscles located between the occipital bone and the first and second vertebrae. There are only 4 muscles here, but there are right and left ones. There are 2 oblique muscles and 2 straight muscles. The oblique muscles are the inferior and superior, and the straight muscles are the minor and major. What is special about them? Here it is, remember it, the inferior oblique muscle. Next to this muscle, we have the occipital nerve, the greater occipital nerve. When it gets irritated, there is constant tension in the other muscles, meaning that irritation of the nerve can reflexively cause tension in all the other occipital muscles. Also, besides the fact that this muscle can compress this nerve, it then passes through several more muscles that are located above the short extensors. This is actually part of the long extensor of the neck and the superficial muscle. Here we have the upper trapezius, meaning tension in the upper trapezius itself. It can either be initially triggered by irritation of this nerve or the muscle itself, due to its tension, can cause nerve irritation later at the moment when the nerve passes right through it. Also, our vertebral artery passes inside the spinal canal right here in the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae. Here it makes a bend at the level of the first cervical vertebra before entering the cranial cavity. So, friends, look, here we have the transverse processes of the vertebrae. This is our spine, and the vertebral artery is located right inside, right here, see. These are the nerve roots that branch off from the spinal cord, and here it enters the cranial cavity. Here it makes a bend right on the first vertebra. It bends like this right here, and these short muscles are located right here. When these muscles tense up, compression occurs. First of all, it's not the artery that gets compressed. The artery is the strongest structure of everything that can be compressed. The first things that get compressed are the nerve and the vein around this vertebral artery. Next to it, and even wrapping around it a bit, is the vertebral vein. And that's why when there's a spasm in this suboccipital area, what happens? First of all, it's not even the blood inflow that's disrupted, but the blood outflow. That is, the blood inflow remains at 100%. So how does it all start, the process? 100% inflow is maintained even when these muscles are in spasm, but the outflow, let's say, is only about 70%. It's restricted. So, new blood comes in, but the old blood can't leave. And this causes nerve compression, which leads to pain. First of all, it's the greater and lesser occipital nerves. The lesser occipital nerve is also located close to the greater one and comes to the surface behind the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So, today our goal is to relieve the spasm in this area. To do that, we need to relax the suboccipital region, these muscles here, part of the long neck extensors. They consist of several muscles, but we're interested in the splenius muscle. The levator scapulae muscle is also important because it often tenses up together with the trapezius muscle. So, friends, the first thing you need to do is find your trapezius muscle. It's located here on your shoulder, but also right here on your neck. It's the most superficial one. The largest part you can grab is exactly this part of the trapezius muscle, and underneath it is everything else. Underneath it are the neck extensors. As we already know, the occipital nerve comes out right here and passes under the inferior oblique muscle. The inferior oblique muscle is located between the spinous process. The spinous process is this projection right here. The central one on the vertebra and the transverse process of the first vertebra along the vertebra. It goes like this from here to here. Here it is in the picture right here. And now we will try to relax this area, to work on this area. To do this, you found the trapezius muscle and now your fingers are here. If we just massage next to this muscle like this, we won't reach the part that we're interested in. That's why we turn the head a little. So, with my right hand, I found the edge of the trapezius here, and I turn my head in the opposite direction. And right here, the splenius muscle becomes accessible, and underneath it is the oblique, the inferior oblique muscle. And this is the area I start working on, and I begin not right under the skull, but a bit lower, about where you think your second vertebra is. So, not directly under the occipital bone, but a little lower. But to be sure you hit the right spot, you can work through this whole area a little above and a little below. In these areas, you'll come across spots that are more painful, and some spots might not hurt, but will feel quite tense. Very often, for example, if someone had ringing in their ears or hearing loss, after working through all these areas, these symptoms also decrease. But here, we're working through it with our fingers. You can start by doing this along the muscle without turning your head, just straight along this muscle. That is between the trapezius and work through the edge of the trapezius. And you try to get right under it, right here. Then you do this with a turn. That's the second action, the second movement. And you work through everything here as well. And next, you find the back edge of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Here it is. If you turn your head and tilt it a bit, you'll see the outline of this muscle. You need to hook this muscle with your fingers. Move it forward a little. Shift it forward. So you hook it and move the muscle itself forward. So you pull it forward and hold it here for a second or two, then pull it again and hold it. there are a lot of fasciae between the neck muscles. Each muscle is in its own fascial sheath, and all the blood vessels and nerves are also located between these fascia in their own fascial sheaths. And very often adhesions form, connective tissue appears between the fascial layers, which limits the mobility of all these structures. So we take it, and there are different ways to do it. You can do it like this, right on the posterior edge of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So you press and simply move it forward, like this. Pull it, hold for a few seconds, relax, pull, hold, relax. After this action, it often happens that you feel a rush of new, fresh blood to the head area. And this often occurs because, first of all, the outflow improves. And only after that, when we've cleared it, poured out the old tea from the glass, can we pour in the new one. So, with these actions, first of all, you eliminate the venous congestion that you may have had for quite a while. And now, new, fresh blood is already rushing to your brain, to your convolutions. Another way is not to use your hands, but to use massage tools. Here is a roller like this. Here is your head, and you lie down so that the area between your occipital bone and, well, roughly the first, second, actually not the first, but between the second vertebra. So you can try to work through this whole area. If it's painful, use a softer roller. Same here, you lie down, and in this position, just when your head is straight, work through it. Then turn your head slightly to one side. Work through it with your head turned to one side, then to the other side. I'll show this on myself in a moment. Another option is the same thing, but more precisely using a ball. You can also do this lying down, or you can place it on something, but it's not convenient on a roller. Use something that won't let it roll around a flat surface, because if you do it on the floor, often it won't reach the right spot. It won't be high enough. So it's better to put it on something so it hits this whole area, the suboccipital region. So what you did with your hands, once you understand where and how to apply pressure, you can try doing it with the ball. So you take it, place it in between the wall and your neck like this, press it in, apply pressure just like that. Press it in, apply pressure. If it hurts, just hold it on one spot. If it feels more or less okay, you can move it a little to one side or the other. Go a bit higher or lower. Also, first work on one side, then on the other side. And also, when you work with the ball or roller on the occipital bone itself, you often find painful spots here. You need to work on those too and get rid of the pain, because these are the attachment points, including right here for the trapezius muscle. And often when it shortens and tightens, this tension actually starts right from this area. It's also preferable to relax and work it out in this way. So many people will like using the roller because you don't need to strain. E, you just lie down, rest your head, E, and simply turn it from side to side like this, making small turns. You can start from the center and move to one side. Begin right from the suboccipital area. There are often many tense spasm spots there. And then move a bit lower, meaning the occiput itself, the occipital bone. On it you have the occipital muscle, which will feel tense and sore. And you should also work on the suboccipital muscles. And do the same thing on the other side, right and left. Sometimes the feeling of tension isn't the same on the right and left sides. On one side, it might be stronger, and on the other, weaker. So, you massage and work through it like this. The sternocleidomastoid muscle. Maybe you've seen different massage techniques where it's worked on and stretched like this. That's all good too. But very often people forget about this action, because the thing about it is that it loses mobility. Specifically, these muscles are supposed to move in a certain way, one relative to the other, and very often it stops moving in this direction, shifting over here. That's why our main task, first of all, is to release the fasciae that might be compressing the veins. Our goal is to work it out like this, to shift it around. So you just shift the sternocleidomastoid muscle itself like this. Move it here like this. Move it once. Move it, hold it, move it, hold it. You're restoring its mobility. You might find areas where it moves less easily. It could be in the upper part, or maybe a bit lower. So at first, when you try to do this, you'll find areas where the movement is uneven. Some places it moves better, some places worse. When you find those areas, work through them. So, friends, it turned out that in today's video, we mostly relaxed together. We relaxed our tense necks, which are tense for reasons we don't really understand. It's tense because it has become so weak that the weight of your head burdens it. Your head has become too heavy for your thin neck. That's why, friends, our next video will be dedicated to training the neck muscles. But before you start, you see, you need to prepare yourself. Everything we've done together, your task is to practice it for a week. In a week, I'll check if you're ready or not. If you're ready, we'll start the exercises. But for now, let's not waste any time. The countdown has started. Your week begins now. We'll meet again in a week, and then we'll see how things are going. Until the next episode.